What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Real Spit from a Gangsta Don Legit. Before I get started, I'm gonna need you to hit that like and smash that subscribe button. Today, we got my man all the way from Detroit, who happens to reside in Boston now. My man Damian. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on? Pleasure to meet you, man.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to have you here on this. It's a pleasure to meet you first of all. It's a pleasure to have you here on this platform.
Yeah,
definitely. So let's just start off right from the back by telling everybody who's Damian.
It's a great question, and it's a great. First of all, again, it's fantastic to be, on this. And like you said, make sure you hit that like button and smash and subscribe. Damian is a person who is beautifully flawed. I'm human. And actually on that note, I think that, in watching, some of your podcasts, the question that I have is, who are you?
Who am I? Well, Paris is also somebody who is a work in progress. I definitely have my flaws as well, and I'm working on them. I know now that I'm not who I used to be. I can definitely say that. So, in knowing that, it allows me to be and do different things. So, I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago. And the good thing was I got a chance to know that. So,
yeah, I think that, I'll let the viewing audience know that we had a great conversation yesterday. By the way, shout out to Rhythms and Raps for a fantastic meal.
Absolutely.
I think that, one of the things that we had talked about was the art of choice. And, I think that just in hearing, a little bit about your background, where you were at, where you were, and more importantly, where you're going, it sounds like that you made, you were at a crossroads, where you either had to, absorb the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And it looks like that you chose the pain of discipline.
Absolutely.
So, I think that, again, in watching, your podcast and just, getting to know a little bit more about you, I will let the audience know that my man and I, we actually we go to the same gym, and so this is what sparked this conversation.
Right.
You're doing a lot in the community, really trying to impress upon the youth that feel that the streets are for them, that it's a false narrative, and the flex, if you will, is short term. Mm-hmm. And so, as somebody who has, really embodied that for a very long time, what are some of the challenges that you feel that, people like yourself, and even like me, I'm a mentor, but, admittedly, I'm not a street guy, but had enough family that was in that life to know about it.
Well, when you say you have enough family in it, who are you speaking of? Let's let the know.
A lot of cousins, and just a lot of people that even I'll go as far back as even people that my parents grew up with. That the streets became a generational way of life,
right?
And so.
Where do you come from?
What city? Me, I'm originally from 8 Mile in Wyoming, Detroit, Michigan. It speaks for itself. There's very few places that, until you come to Boston, for example, you hear about Stuber Street and you hear about Mass Ave, but, in Detroit, you hear about 5 Mile, 6 Mile, 7 Mile, 8 Mile. Jay Electronica, even talked about that, but for me, it was a bit different because, those people that I'm speaking of were very adamant about, hey, you really, this ain't as glamorous as people make it out to be, and you don't want to live a life where you have to stay uncomfortable because you could lose your life,
right.
Versus a regular work environment, you know, where the worst that could happen is somebody, you know, might fire you from a job or whatever. But, you know, so, you know, I listened, and I think that, you know, one of the things that...
So let me stop you there for a minute.
Sure.
So our topic today is choices. And so you're showing that you exercise your choice of choosing the street life, which you had some cousins and friends and people who were in it heavy, not just your average, they were in it heavy. And you chose early on to not go left, but to go right. And by you making that decision, it definitely changed the moves that you made in life. Let them know, like you were about to say, that they made sure that you knew that the streets weren't what they appeared to be, and that you had better options if you would have just stayed straight and did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, again, you know, when you have scenarios where you know, people are throwing Molotov cocktails in people's windows for, you know, deals gone bad, or just, you know, you doing ordinary stuff like going to the gas station.
What do you mean deals go bad? What do you mean, drug deals?
Drug deals, you know, or just the whole idea of having to prove your worth to, you know, to an OG or something like that. So you go somewhere and you just, you know, randomly do stuff to people just to prove, you know, that you belong. And to me, I don't think that I could ever have enough hate. First of all, I think yesterday actually we had a great conversation. There was something that you said yesterday that you admitted was totally random, but it was so important. You were talking about that, you know, when you sat back and you kind of really thought about the why you were doing what you were doing, and it was because, you know, you said that you hated yourself enough to where it made you hate other people.
Absolutely.
And so for me, you know, I think that, you know, when I go back and think about some of the things that, you know, my people that I knew, relatives, and even, you know, people that had grown up with our family did, I think that was really kind of the catalyst of it. You know, it's the rawest form of jealousy, right?
That's right.
You know, and you were mentioning, you know, that you could see somebody wearing a $50,000 shirt, or, you know, and that, obviously that's just, you know, an exaggerated example,
right.
But I got the point.
Right.
You know, where you would just see somebody and just the rage of envy would make you want to either get what they got or worse, you know. So I think...
Or take what they got.
Yeah, take what they got.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, and also, you know, we were talking about choices. For me, my family, meaning my mother and my father, they saw a lot of things happening, and kind of along with that, my father's job transferred us to a city in Ohio, where we went from being in Detroit, Michigan, very pro-black, you know, to moving to this town in Ohio, where we were the first, you know, black people to live in this particular town. And so the reason why I have such, you know, profound respect for the art of choice was because we went from one extreme to the other, where it was so much so that when we would go back to Detroit, a lot of my cousins, people that I grew up with, because I'm an only son, I have 3 sisters, so some of my male cousins that were like my first cousins and things like that, when we would go back to Ohio, they'd be like, you know, yo fam, you know, you talk, you don't, you know, you losing your street sound, if you will, and those kinds of things. And so
you became educated, and they took that as being, in their ignorance, they took that to meaning that you were selling out, sort of, so to speak, your blackness.
Yeah. And you know, the funny part about that was, you know, when they would go to get jobs and stuff like that, you know, they would make that 2.5-hour trip back, you know, or to Ohio, you know, to ask, you know, my father, yo, how do you tie a tie? Or they would ask my mother, who was an accountant, you know, yo, can you teach me how to type? And, you know, because this job says I need to learn how to type, you know, 40 words per minute. You know, this is long before computers and laptops and all that stuff, you know. And so, you know, and again, you know, the whole thing about choices, the choice the choices that were made impacted me, because you have to remember, I'm 45 years old, and my parents were born at a time where, you know, your skin color really mattered. You know, they were born, you know, they were growing up in an environment long before the Civil Rights Act. So it was things like my father, who was a medic in the Army, he couldn't even get a cup of coffee in certain places because of his skin color.
Right.
And in certain hospitals, they didn't want black males to work in the hospitals because, you know, because white patients would, you know, not want to be taken care of, you know. And my mother, she actually gave up a job working as an accountant for a very large automotive firm when we relocated to Ohio to become a housewife. And when she went to apply for jobs, because I mean, look, my mother's name was Pamela Hall, my father's name was Ernest Hall. Very ambiguous, you know. It's not like, you know, Shaquita Jenkins, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, you know, there was one time where, you know, my mother went to apply for a job in this town we lived in Ohio, and they literally told her that the job was no longer available because once they saw who she was, and literally as she was leaving,
so the name got her interview because it was a white name.
Yeah. And what ended up happening was, as you know, she was leaving, because she kind of recognized what it was. The secretary had went over to the other women who happened to be white, of course, and said that, you know, due to a cancellation, you know, that their interviews could be moved up. So the choice, you know, this whole art of choice thing, it was very real and it was very deep. For me, I was always the type that, you know, it was never what they called you, it's what you answer to. Now, I have a sister who is just 2 years younger than me. I love her to death. She was quite the opposite, you know. She always wanted to prove her blackness. And, you know, it gave her a reputation of being tough and all that stuff. And, you know, and a lot of people started befriending her. But then what happened was, you know, when you do something like that, something's going to suffer. So her education suffered. So while she was, you know, people would say stuff to her, and she would, you know, hitting them, you know, and doing all this stuff, it caused her to lessen in her education. And, you know, it was just one of those things where some people would even go as far as to say, it's hard to believe that y'all came from the same house. So for me, what I did, because I didn't want to be, like I said, we came from two prisons, if you will, extreme prisons, right? But the one medium was culture, right? And so, you know, after graduating high school, I joined the Navy, and that really opened up a whole other paradigm of choice, you know, because when you're in the military, you know, it's kind of do as you're told, and you know, you learn a different, you learn. It's almost like street discipline that way. You know, you don't deviate, because the consequences, you know, can be really bad. I mean, you get a dishonorable discharge in the military, and you can't. People don't know that you can't even get a job at McDonald's, because a lot of those places are like, you know, they're on base, so therefore they have government contracts with people. So, but back to the choice thing, and we were talking about, you know, the whiteness aspect of it, right? So I was in kindergarten and was going to the bathroom, and had just learned how to tie my shoe. Was going to the bathroom, bent over, and was trying to tie my shoe. I didn't see that there were 5 white kids that had followed me into the bathroom. So, you know, the little game that they had was they were gonna break the brown crayon, because, you know, with Crayola, you know, you could break them. And so, you know, here I am, 5 years old, you know, trying to defend myself against, you know, a bunch of white kids. 4 more white kids come in. They see something's not right. They start helping me fight the kids, right? And where I'm going with this is, again, the choice, right? I could have lumped all of them in one basket and been like, you know what? Nah. Do you know, to this very day, those guys are my best friends to this day.
Is that right?
That's right. And they actually have been to the 8, as we call it. You know, and it's one of those where, you know, initially, you know, people would look, you know, like, you know, they 5, you know, but it ended up being, oh, you Pam sons, 'cause that's what they were known by. And so it was like, oh, they showed them it was all love. And so, again, back to the point of choice.
Choice. Yeah.
It's one of those.
You could have chose from that situation alone
Yep.
to hate all white people
Yep.
because of that instance,
Yep.
that situation.
Yep.
But instead, you looked at it as there was just a few bad guys out of that group, and,
Yep.
and the other people who came to your aid actually turned out to be your best friends. And it showed you that the choice you made was that people are who they are no matter what color skin they're.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll even take it a step further. One of the guys, his father happened to be a cop in the city. And he came to our house, and he was so embarrassed, because there's other things that happened, like people had came to our house, they'd knock on the door, and they would let us know that they were trying to get enough signatures to have my parents audited, because they couldn't believe that niggas could live in their city. This is real stuff, so when people talk about racism, I know a thing or two about that, because my father was a truck driver for Yellow Freight, so he had abnormal work hours, so everybody thought that, that was a front, and he was dealing and stuff like that, because that was the reputation of people from Detroit, specifically 8 Mile, and, having nooses hung in the back, just all kinds of wild stuff. But the point is and how it, again, this whole idea of choice was, when you fast forward to some of the stuff today, like with police and these type of things, I am a believer that, based on my experience, that good people need to really weed out the bad in every aspect, right? And so for me, where this choice became, really impactful was that experience, because, I have cousins that are from Detroit, have never left Detroit. And let me tell you something, the audience can't see, but where this revolving door is, right, would be like the Detroit River. And whatever that building is, right on the other side of that is Windsor, Ontario, Canada. It's that close. Or you drive 4 hours, to, what would it be, I guess 94 West, you're in Chicago, or, you hit, 71 South, or 75 South, you're in Cleveland. So my point is that choice was not just something as simple as like a decision. It's a way of life. And I think that, I think one of the things that I've noticed, in your podcast, and just even, in your dealings, is that, you're really trying to implement that mentality, choice,
Right.
Because, if you stay in the same lane all the time, you never really know how big your options are. Or, if you were to take, some of the aspects of street mentality, like the leadership and all of those things, and you apply them in a different way, the impact can be far more greater. And again, back to the whole choice thing, I think this is why people like yourself are really needed, because I will never say that our youth are lost, because I think that's not accurate. What I think is that more than ever, there are influences from everywhere, kids that, that they feel like they don't have an identity,
Right.
They go to social media, and then they end up, trying to create a life for them that, is really not them, they don't exist. And I think that this is some of the things that you had talked about, even, in your own dealings, about,
About that mask.
Yeah, about the mask, right? And so I feel like, to our youth, you have a whole lot of choices, and it's one of those things where I think that, from maybe a different conversation about, capitalism and just the whole idea of having an implied caste system, because, listen, when we came to Boston, I got relocated here. I work in clinical medical research. People told us, listen, you don't want to live in Dorchester. Stay away from Stuber Ave. Stay away from Mass Ave. And for me, it was just so interesting to me, because what if I have relatives that lived on, you know what I mean? Like, so people were so quick to say where not to live. Oh, you want to live in the Back Bay, or, or you want to live, you know, in the seaport, you know. But we moved, you know, we live right in Rosendale, in an area that's kind of, it's a really beautiful blend of people. But, you know, I just want to say that when it comes to choice, sometimes the choice isn't about what you're doing right now, you know, because one of the things that, you know, my mother used to say is the cool, interesting thing about life is you're at the same time, you're always going to be the youngest and the oldest that you've ever been, you know, and that you have life and you have death, which are certain. Right. What you do in between that is totally, you know, totally up to you. And lastly, you know, she would say, you know, look, in life, people tell you, you know, chase your dreams, you know, chase your goals, right? She says people will always tell you that. She was like, it's bullshit, because if you read between the lines, you're still running. You want to embrace your goals, you want to capture your dreams. And so I think that, you know, in this time frame where we're in such a rush to get money, when we're in such a rush to, you know, to go get the B loan, you know, because we want to flex on the gram, and, you know, and even for, you know, for young women, you know, wanting to be, you know, respected, but doing it in such a way where, you know, they're taking the clothes off and all that stuff, and not realizing that, you know, when you put these things on social media, again, the choice, you know, you can't erase that. Right. I mean, anybody on Facebook knows, like, you know, something will pop up 3 years from now, this is what you did, or 5 years from now, this is what you did. And so, you know, I just think that, you know, choice is it's something that we don't really respect enough in our communities, because for fear that if we do something this way, we a sucker, or if we do this, we're selling out, or whatever else. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, life don't give a shit what color you are. Right. You know.
That's right. So let me ask you, you do a mentoring program, is that correct?
Yeah.
You mentor young
yeah. I've been mentoring for a minute, and here, honestly, it's not something that's like full-fledged mentoring. Actually, so we have 2 children. Our daughter is 23, and she lives in Philadelphia. She's going to school. Our son, who just turned 18, when we moved here, he was going to, I think they call it Westie, and, you know, a lot of his friends, you know, it was apparent, you know, that they needed guidance. And I think that the other part about that is that it's not a negative. You know, I applaud them for saying, listen, you know, I grew up without a dad, or just these scenarios where, you know, they didn't have a male figure. And so, again, I think, we talk about choice. When I was growing up, you know, I was fortunate enough to, you know, to be in a 2-parent home, and then also, you know, being in a place where all of my family was literally there. So, you know, we sit on the porch and you hear you know, your grandfather and your uncles and these things, you know, drop gems and stuff like that. And so for me, I always felt where we disconnected, you know, as Black and brown people, is that we never carried that torch. So for me, I, you know, took that opportunity to seize that and say, okay, well, you know, what are you thinking about? You know, what are your goals, and, you know, how do you feel, you know, mentoring can help you? Because there's other people like, obviously people like yourself, and then there's a couple of other people that I know that have mentoring programs, and I know that, you know, in the city of Boston, there's a lot of programs geared towards that. But you know, sometimes people don't always want to display all their business out there like that, you know, and sometimes people, I mean, I'm sure you know how it is, like some people will mentor Black and brown kids because, you know, it's like the trendy thing to do, you know. And so for me, you know, my son has a lot of friends, you know, and it's just something as simple as, listen, going to Real Deal down to JP and getting a pizza and saying, hey, like, you know, what are you struggling in school, or you know, what do you think you want to do? And just really, you know, letting them tell me, because a lot of times mentors, you know, they see things like, oh, this person came from this home or or that background or whatever, and they just feel like they have to do something. For me, as I think you again you had brought up the whole idea of like listening, and things like that. And so really, man, we
So you give them that. You give them like a big brother type thing where they can listen to. They get this positive male figure
For sure.
they can learn from. They see that he's successful in life. He has his family. He has a good job, and it gives them the incentive to want to do better. And I think more of our black men need to take that leadership role and help in that sense where you're mentoring other people, other young men to let them know that, like you say, just if it's just to go get a pizza, someone to talk to about whatever it is they're going through. I really respect that about you. That's a good thing. And we're gonna have to talk off camera about that because there's a couple of guys that I know that could definitely use that, and maybe I can tie you guys together. You know what I mean?
What? Yeah, I mean, because even look, I was in the military and things like that, and and for me, my military experience was much different. But what I also advocate is really, if you're gonna do something, take the time to learn the ins and outs about it.
Right.
Because look, like I tell people all the time, when they talk about going into the Army or going to the, I will never knock that because, sometimes people need that. Like, you talked about some of your experiences, right? Like how you talked about, how incarceration was a blessing in disguise because it gave you time to really just be one with yourself and kind of not only ask the questions about, who am I, but more importantly, like, what do I want to do with myself? And so, again, I think that, being a medic, I saw, people that were joining the military because, they wanted to go to Harvard, or Yale or MIT, but didn't have the, the money or the academics to do it. And what ends up happening is, once you join those branches, it's kind of tough because, when it comes to war and conflict, those are not only the ones that are kind of the first ones to go, but when you look at like their suicide rates and all kinds of stuff like that, like it's through the roof.
Right.
So I tell people like, look, if you decide to go that route, remember, the number one goal, for example, is to support and defend your country. So everything else comes secondary to that. So
one of the biggest choices I made when I was incarcerated was to never sell drugs again. And it was a huge choice because you got to think, when you're selling drugs, when you're a drug dealer, it's a lifestyle that you adapt, right? That you adjust to. You're used to making a certain amount of money every day. You're used to the power that you have, right? Because there's definitely power when you have money. You have the product and you have the connects. Like you become powerful. So the biggest adjustment I had to make and the biggest choice was to leave that alone. And the reason I made that decision, and I never went back on it to this day, no matter how much I struggled, no matter what I was going through financially, I always knew there was an easier way. I always knew, I could call up one of the homies or one of the old connects or even find a new connect, right?
Yeah.
And life could be so much easier. At least that's the fake shit that we believe, because there is no good life in that lifestyle at all, right? You always have to look over your shoulders. You can't trust nobody.
Yeah.
It's not what it's cracked up to be. So when I made that choice, man, the decision to leave that alone outright, the reason I did is because I realized that I was pushing poison to our people, right? And I was helping create these crack babies and these babies who are, being born with addiction, not having a chance. You know what I mean?
Wow.
The drug dealer he's responsible for that. You know what I mean? So I looked at that and I said, I don't want no parts of that no more. So that was the first big change that I really made, was to give that up. Now I gave that up before I gave up playing with that gun. It took some time before I got rid of that, right? But I mean, like I said in the beginning of this interview, I'm a work in progress. So it was something that was going to happen over time. It was progression, and I got to the point where I ended up putting that down as well. But that took a lot longer because you live by that thing in the street. You gotta keep it on. You gotta do what you gotta do. But when I learned the power of choice, and that whatever you do in life, you're responsible for it. So whatever happens to you in life, 90% of what happens to you is your fault. 10% is fate. So what I learned was, if I want to keep going back and forth to prison, if I want to keep having to shoot people or get shot or any of those things like that, right? Then if I made that choice to continue to gang bang or whatever, then the outcome was going to be what it was, which was either, there's only two outcomes, and that's death or prison.
Yeah.
There's no effect. Now, yeah, some of us get shot, some of us get stabbed, and we might take that. Some of us take it as a life lesson, and some don't. But you have to look at it, no matter what happens, as a wake-up call and time to make a different choice. You know what I'm saying? Instead of doing the same thing, because if you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, that's insanity.
Right.
And a lot of us don't realize that that's what we're dealing in, insanity, right? So I've come to the conclusion that if I want my life to be different, I had to make different choices. And so that's why when we were talking yesterday, and I said, bro, I think it'd be good if we just went on the podcast differently. We just talked and asked each other questions and talk about choices, because the reason why I see everything that's happening today with our younger brothers is because of the choices they're making. They don't have to choose to be disrespectful in their rhymes and their raps to other to their ops or whatever, right? But they do. They choose to do that. They don't have to make that choice when they're disrespecting the day. And we never did that, brother. I just got to make that clear. We never did that. Coming up in my time, we didn't do that. And that's one of the biggest things that I think, and that's why a lot of their beefs are not squashed right now. They say we can't squash it because they disrespect after one of their ops get killed. They go out there and they put it in a song, where they go to the cemetery and piss on the grave. Like, come on, man, what are y'all doing? This make better choices, man.
Yeah.
Please, you got to. But so the choices is really important, man, because that's something that we're in control of.
Yep.
If nothing more in life, you are in control of the choices you make, and we just got to make better ones.
It's true, and I think that, again, in some of the conversations that we had yesterday, I think that it's the image, I think, that blocks the choice, right? You'll have people who...
I like that. You're right, too. The image that blocks the choice. That's right.
You have people who are killing each other over streets they don't even own.
Right. Talk about it. Yeah.
And again, I think that, again, back to the whole image of, I live on Stuver Street, or,
Wait a minute, you've been saying Stuver. What is Stuver Street? I'm not even...
Stuver.
Seaver Street, are you trying to say?
Seaver. I'm sorry, my apologies, y'all. Seaver Street. Seaver Street. So, and I think that what happens is people feel like they have to do the most. And you have to also remember, too, that, you talk about raps, a lot of people, I mean, that could be a whole other podcast about, people, rhyming about stuff that they're not even really a part of. And, when you mentally live in a space where you feel it's easier to get a gun than it is in education, you will always have these ideas that, no, I have to inflict harm on that person because they disrespected me. And, kind of back to the mentoring part, I've had kids that have told me that. And I was like, well, you want to be gangster, go get an education.
So that's really gangster.
Well, I say that because, I think that, again, in hearing, some of your trials and tribulations, and just, again, coming from a place where, again, I had cousins and people that I know that, were in that lifestyle, choice and change, right? The hardest part is always the first step. And then, understanding that, those things like you and I talked about, I always think about the fact that, if you are, dependent on drugs or dependent on alcohol, you can go to, you know, to be rehabilitated, right? It's the drug dealer that really has the biggest obstacle, because look, if you pulling in, you know, $50 a week or $20,000 a day, and then you know you do that bid for 10 or 20 years, and you like you said before, it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. You know, and that's something that, you know, McDonald's can't pay you to do, or Wawa, you know what I mean? So I always feel like, you know, the dealers always have the toughest road, because for people that are dependent, it's a habit.
Absolutely.
You know, and I don't know if there's really a difference between habit and lifestyle, because I think they kind of go along with each other, right? So, you know, I think that your podcasts are important, because you know what? Because you can't, you know, while you may not be able to save every person, you might be able to save one,
and
or might be able to get 2 or 3 to listen at least, you know?
Yeah, no, that's definitely the goal, man. When I realized that I had a story and I had something that was going to make other people listen, my whole goal from the door was just to save one person. If I can get to one person and have them change their thinking, that would save their life. So I'm not actually saving their life, but if I can plant something, a thought, an idea in their heads, and they take that and run with that, and it changes how they think, because once they start changing their thinking, it's going to change their life. It's going to change the outcome, right? So that's the goal. Like someone hearing what you're saying, or whatever. And I mean, they don't even know how close you really was to being. You could have been part of a big organization out there in the streets, right? Like you really did make a huge choice by escaping Detroit's the mean streets of Detroit, let's say, and going to get the education and doing what was best for you at the time. But do you want to let them know who your kin is?
Well, I mean, so I found this out fairly recently, but you know, there are some connections to, I don't even know if I think that'll be for another podcast. Let me check. Okay. Because you know, because there's somebody still incarcerated, and you know, and I don't, you know, but
yeah, you know,
but yeah,
stir up anything.
Yeah. And
all right, well, we'll leave it like this. Just let's say he's definitely connected to a legendary street people out of Detroit. Let's leave it like that. Everyone knows the names. We'll leave it like that. All right.
Yeah, and you know, I just want to say again, you know, I think that you know, what you're doing out here is necessary, because you know, again, I revert to back in the day. You know, when you think about the OGs and stuff like that, you know, the OGs were respected. So you know, I think that we're in a time and a place now where, you know, we just have to listen. And there's a saying that some of my friends have. It's called "lift as you climb," and I think that we have to do that. You know,
I like that.
And we have to start minimizing the crab in the bucket, you know, mentality. You know, and
that's big here in Boston, man.
Yeah,
it's big.
Well, yeah, and you know, and why I say that, because even with my son, who he's into visual arts, he's a creative, and you know, and he will tell you in a minute that Boston is a place for education and not creative thinkers, which is really deep when you think about that. But I think that we have to get back to listening and taking care of each other, because listen, I mean, society has shown that, you know, we have to depend on each other. We don't have the luxury of other groups, if you will. You know, I mean, I think if you look at, you know, what's happened, you know, over the summer and just other incidents, you know, we have to be the catalyst for change in our community, and people like yourself. And there was I mean, he's damn near family. His name is Calvin Mann. He has a mentoring, big mentoring program out of Detroit called Encourage Me I'm Young. and so I plugged you guys in on an Instagram chat. So, you know, and you know, just people like y'all, because you know, really, y'all are the difference makers. You know what I mean? Like, to be honest, you know, me, I can mentor and talk about certain things, but when it comes to, you know, handling that tool, you know, or, you know, weight and stuff like that, like, you know, I'll let people know. That's where you come in.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
I can be the, you know, I'm that person, like you said, you know, that had a choice, you know, and I just went, you know, a different path.
So on that note,
yeah,
what do you say to the young brothers out there today that are watching this and they're active in these streets, whether it's selling drugs, whether it's shooting one another, gangbanging, whatever? What message do you give to them?
it's a really good and deep question. I would say think, you know, because that energy that you have, that power, you know, those things that you talk about, you know, and that you actually lived, right? To listen to people like yourself, because things, again, you know, things have changed in such a way where people don't respect the OGs no more,
right.
You know, and I think that
and it's crazy because they don't understand that we've been there, you know, we've lived through it already. We know what to expect. We know what's really going to happen. They have yet to get there. They're going that route, you know. So we've already been in the state prisons. We've been in the feds. We've been in the county, right? And so we know what's going to happen to them when they're going there. So if they would listen, it would stop them from even getting to that point. You know what I mean? But today's generation, they're very disrespectful.
So it's funny, you know, what I would tell my kids, and maybe this is something that, you know, to add to the answer, is I would tell them, you know, I've been 15, I've been 17, you know, I've been 22, you know, you haven't been 45.
Right.
And I think that,
and the sad thing about that,
yeah,
a lot of you young brothers are not going to see 45. You're not going to see 50, and that can change if you make what we're talking about now, the right choice. Change your thinking. You know what I mean? Change your lifestyle, and listen. Stop thinking that because we're older and we made it to 40s or 50s that we're punks or we're soft or we don't know, you know, what y'all going through. Of course we do. Of course we do. We only made it to this age because of the blessing from God. That's it. Like some of us we have our wounds. We've been shot, stabbed. We've been jumped. All the things that you guys are going through or gonna go through, we've already been there. So for you to not, and for you OGs who are not telling these younger brothers what it is, instead of putting battery packs in their backs, like the OGs who are they're adding to the problem and they're encouraging, you all are the ones who are the suckers, like real talk. You're supposed to give these younger brothers a way out, teach them something different, you know. So let's all step up, man, and let's do our part. Let's help and like he said, change that crab in the barrel mentality and help lift up while we're going up. You know what I mean? Let's not leave no one behind, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and that was, you know, to kind of expand upon that, you know, you're talking about the disrespect and stuff like that, you know. Again, I always have to put that out there. I'm not part of that, but I imagine disrespect is circular, right? So, you know, if you're the person that, you know, does get caught with doing something, you know, you could lose your life because now you become expendable, you know, because people will say, well, I don't know, you know, if they apply that, you know, if the feds or whoever apply that grip on them, you know, will they tell?
Oh,
you
man, 90% of y'all will tell, you know it, like, come on. And that's not even a diss to no one, it's just the reality. When you get faced with that time, like you're looking at 99 years, or you're looking at 100 years, how many of y'all really built for that? How many? Because there's not many, trust me. I faced 2 life bids, two life, and and never cracked, never thought of giving no one else up, nothing. But don't think I wasn't scared every day going to trial. Like, damn, these white people got my life in their hands. But it was because of a choice I made. That's why I'm telling you now, these choices are very powerful. Had I not dealt in the gang life, if I didn't deal with the drugs, I would have never ever had a case with the feds where if I would have got found guilty, it was natural life in prison. In the state, natural life in prison. Oh, wait a minute, hold up. But guess what? I was 28 years old, and they said, I'll tell you what, you cop out, we'll give you 30 years. This is just the Fed, this ain't even the States. So 30 years at 28, that's life anyway. You're 58 years old coming out. I'll still be there today. Wow. You understand? But my faith and the fact that I knew I didn't do what I was charged with made me fight. So a lot of people thought I was stupid, like, yo, you're crazy going against the feds, you can't beat them. And a lot of people, it's not that you can't beat them, it's that their conviction rate is so high because we get scared and we cop out. That's what really happens, right? And I just wanted to say that just to say that a lot of people are not going to be able to be in the shoes I was in and take it. They would have cracked, they would have snitched, they would have told on their left hand or their right hand.
Yeah.
Y'all ain't built like that. So let's stop. Let's make that right choice now and leave the game alone while you got a chance and a choice. That's what I got to say about choices, bro.
Yeah, I mean, and, again, to expand upon that, because, you never know what tomorrow may hold for you. You don't want to, I think that a lot of times it's generational, you know what I mean? And so, I think that there's more validity and more power in being that one brother or even the sisters that get caught up in that, to change that generational cycle. Because once you do, you realize how bright the future can be. Now, it's not to say that life will not give you challenges, but the thing is when you think about choices, you understand to never stop learning because life never stops teaching. And when you think about that, you start thinking about, just how you live your life. Because as you and I were talking about, again, that disrespect is almost generational, because if you inflicted harm, to somebody, and it doesn't necessarily have to be death. People aren't always going to immediately retaliate, and they may not retaliate against you.
Right, it might be someone else.
It might be your sister walking your child to school or something like that. And so I think just to again to talk about the choices, I think that what you're doing is there's a lot of words that you can use to describe things, but I think it's indescribable because impact is something that is indescribable. Because if you can, again, pivot somebody's thinking, the impact that you've made is generational, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, to those that are, that are in the street life and they believe that that's the only way that they can do things. I mean, you're watching this podcast. I mean, you can hit the like button, you can subscribe, but you can also comment. Mm-hmm. And that way, we could chat, because I mean, listen, from, man to man, maybe what I'll say is communication never hurts. It's free. And the outcome can be something that, can take you places.
I think a lot of these young brothers, that's what they're missing. They don't have no one to really talk to, you know what I mean, of substance, you know? And that's where we need a lot of older brothers who have changed their lives and are doing, right for themselves to reach out and let these brothers be able to get in touch with them and have these communications, right? Like, for instance, when I was just talking about the 2 Life Biz, the reason I brought it up is because that's where that change came from for me, where I said, okay, that the drugs is done. And we all make deals with God. You know how it goes. Yo, God, get me out of this situation. I promise I'll never do that. So what I did, I'm guilty of that. So what I did is I said, that's the first time in my life I dropped to my knees. I never believed in God prior to that. I don't know if you want to call me an atheist or whatever, but I just didn't see him in my life, right? I didn't think he was real. I didn't think any of that stuff. So, but this one day I went to my cell and I couldn't take it no more. I mean, I'm facing 2 life bids. So I'm gonna be real. Like, this is real spit from a Gangsta going legit, right? So I gotta tell you what it really is. So I went in my cell and I contemplated suicide. I was thinking of how to do it effectively, quickly, and I had got a visit from one of my close cousins, and I had let her know what I was gonna do. And she said, "Are you crazy? Cuz come on, you're stronger than that." She was like, "You can't do that. You gotta fight this. You gotta fight that." I said, "How am I gonna fight 2 life bids?" I'm like, the feds is, you know how it is with them. They trying to give me life, and then the state is trying to give me life. She's like, "I'm telling you, fight." Wow. Right? So when the visit was over, because that was the day I was gonna do it. Like it was already planned. I was already, you know, I had my sheet ready and everything to just jump off the tear and, you know, tie it up, and it was gonna be that, right? And I'm saying this to y'all, and people don't even really know this, except for my cousin who I confided in about this. But I'm saying this in hopes that it can get somebody to make that right choice and leave this lifestyle alone, right? But I did fight. So, but this is where I got the strength from. When I dropped to my knees that night, and I prayed and said, "God, if you get me out this situation, I'll never sell drugs or hurt someone again unless they tried to hurt me," right? I definitely put that out there, right? I said, I'll leave this life alone. And that night, man, I had the craziest dream. But when I woke up that next day, I knew I was going home. I wrote a letter to my brother. He was my co-defendant on one of the cases at the time. And I told him, "We going home." Sure enough, never ever looked back again. And I defended myself. My attorneys, they said that I'm not, first of all, they were like, "You're not a lawyer. You're gonna fuck yourself. You're gonna get life big." I wasn't listening because I had got that sign. I had knew that I was gonna go home. I knew it, right? There was something else. There was a purpose for my life. And then the funny thing is, I got this book called Purpose Driven Life. Yeah. By what is his name?
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? The pastor.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best books I've read as far as motivation and just showing you that you're more, like, you know, a lot of us think less of ourselves, right? But after reading this book, I started feeling real good about who I was as a man, right? And what I contributed to and what I could contribute to, right? So with all of that happening at the same time, I just got that strength to go on and fight. And the result of that was 2 not guilties acquitted of all charges. You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
And that was the transformation for me. That's when I said, man, these streets. And then while I'm going through all of that, you would think, now remember, gang affiliated, you know, selling drugs that, you know, that a lot of people that I'm selling to, where were they at? Those people wasn't supportive. That wasn't my support team. My support team was my mother and my girl at the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. It wasn't none of my homies. No one I was banging for. No one I was putting on for. None of that. You know what I'm saying? So listen to that, y'all. If y'all want to sit in a cell with a life bit over your head, and you think that your homies is gonna ride with you, and they're gonna be there for you, they're gonna take care of your loved ones out here, they're gonna look out, that's bullshit. It ain't happening. It's not. You're setting yourself up for pain. You're setting yourself up for a lot of failure, bro. You know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that you had brought up yesterday, because I know we had talked about that part, but I also think that there were other indicators that were leading you to change, you know, to really sit and think. And I think that one of them, I think you had talked about, was, you know, you were in a situation where you were, you know, for a better lack of term, you know, you were dealing with somebody, and that person was basically begging, you know, for their life, and and right then and there, you had the ultimate choice, and you know, like you say, you know, you don't know what it was, but it was something.
That was one of the biggest choices of my life.
Yeah.
So what he's talking about is there was an incident where we was in a big fight. It was a big gang fight, and there was a person who had picked up a rock or something. He tripped over the train tracks or something like that, and I had him.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I had a knife and I had him right to wrong, and I stabbed him a couple of times, you know. And then when I was going for the kill, he looked at me and he was saying, "Please, I got kids. You know, don't do this. I got kids." And I was like, "Fuck you!" And I went in and I just, you know, I stabbed, and my homies was like, "Kill him," you know, whatever. So that's the mentality at the time, you know. And they thought I did, but something snapped, man, and I heard what he was saying, and it. So when I went down, they thought it, you know, was over, but I didn't. I stabbed the knife in the dirt next to his chest, the dirt next to his head, chest, upper body, and when I went to prison after that, I sat and I thought about that over and over and over again. And that's when I realized that there was a mask that I was wearing, when I was in these streets. And there's a lot of us hide behind this mask where we have this image that we think we have to portray. And we have to be this tough guy, we gotta be this killer. And it's not who we really are. So what I realized was, from that incident there, that's not who, my heart was not of malice. My heart was not as hateful as I thought it was. I realized that there was another side. There was a side that was more compassionate, you know.
Yeah.
And by me sparing that brother's life, I think that's why God spared mine. You know what I mean? Because when I got on my knees that day and prayed to get me out of the situation I was in, why did that incident flash back to me instantly? Like I kind of always wondered, was this his way of saying, I'm gonna let you walk, I'm gonna let you go, right? Because you spared someone that was begging for his life.
I mean, I think it would, you know, it sounds like it was just something even deeper than that. It was just, you know, that I think that in that moment, in a very obviously unique way, I think that he was saying, you know, that this isn't really who you are. You know, you've never been that person. You know, it's okay for you to take off the mask.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
It's okay. You know, and I think that again, it's easy to sit and talk about choices and stuff like that, but after the fact, right? You know, and so, you know, for me, I think that, you know, in our conversations, I learned that, you know, that there's more that I can do, and then there's, you know, more that I can reach, you know. And so I think, you know, again, I think that, you know, my hope is this is the first of many collaborative podcasts. I
Absolutely.
mean, you know, just real quick, I think when we talked about choices, right, I think that you had mentioned that, you know, with future podcasts, you wanted to have it, you know,
open up
more and have more conversations. So I would say, you know, if there are OGs that, you know, want to step to the plate and really, you know, be a difference maker,
or not just OGs, younger brothers who are tired of being active in these streets and want to change. You know, you all come on a platform and tell your stories, because the brothers who are 25, 30, and because there's a lot of them that after their time in prison or got shot or whatever it was, they changed their thinking, changed their life. You know, come on here, please, and share your stories, man. And because we can all learn from each other. That's a fact, you know. Excuse me. It's not just about an old G who been incarcerated or been. That's not what this format is about. Gangsta Gun Legit is about the real spit from the Gangsta Gun Legit is about the founder. You know what I mean? This is just my story, really. It doesn't have to be everybody's story. So I want to open this platform up for everyone to sit next to me and talk and tell their story. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing with you. You know, and I love it. I think you brought more out of me in this conversation back and forth than I did myself. You know what I mean? So I like it.
Well, you know,
and we have to do more of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Reoccur.
For sure. And I think that, you know, this is how you change the narrative in the community, because let's face it, you know, more people will watch YouTube or Instagram or whatever versus maybe sitting down and talking, right?
Right.
So I think that this is an excellent, you know, platform. And again, you know, like you said, you know, this isn't about, you know, who had the most body count or, you know, who had the most weight.
You listen. You listen to the podcast.
Yeah, you know, it's really about
it's about change.
About change, and really, you know, the process. Because as you mentioned earlier, your change didn't happen overnight.
Not at all.
You know, and I think that that's one of the other things.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because it didn't. After my first incarceration, when I came home, when I first got the feds, I was more of a monster. Like, it first put a lot of hatred in me. All my fears were gone. So it was definitely a process. It was not till a couple bits later that the real change happened. You know what I mean? Yeah. But a lot of people will do that. You'll go to jail. You'll get in there. You start getting a lot of hate. You know what I mean? You get more angry. A lot of stuff would anger me, man. So it is definitely a process, and it's something that you'll have to some brothers will have to continuously go through it until they get to that point. But the point is, make sure that you can change. If you change your thinking, you'll be able to accept the fact that, you know, this ain't really for me. You'll know, you know, and you'll give it up. Because some people, let's be real, there are brothers out there, and I can't knock it, but this is who they are, and this is what they are, and they're going to be criminals or slanging or banging to the day they die. That's what it is. And I thought that was me, but I found out that really wasn't who I was. You know what I mean? And, so that's why I was able to make the change. But I do understand that some brothers, it's going to take a lot more. Yeah. Because this is embedded in them. Like, this is what I do. You know.
But you know, I think to that point, if that's who you are, right, or even if that's who you choose to identify with, you still recognize that life ain't for everybody. So then I think that it should be, you know, that those types should still reach out and say, well, listen, you know, you don't want to be me. You know, you don't want to live this life. You know, you like you were saying before. You know, some of y'all, you know, you think you built for it until it happens. You know, and so
I mean, them letters is real, man. They give life. You know, it's not no numbers. You know, it's life, and everybody can't deal with it. You know, so
yeah. But you know, again, I appreciate you, you know, taking time to you know, chat and have the kind of dialogue where you felt that, you know, we should put this on a podcast type of deal, because I'm sure that, you know, like kind of relating to choice, right? Not everybody is someone that you feel has the ability to impact enough to put on a podcast. So, you know, just know.
No, your story though, it's definitely going to influence somebody else, man, because they'll see, oh, wait a minute, that's just like me. You know, there's that brother that's just like that, man, that can put one foot in, or he can take that other foot and say, you know what, there's more. It's better to go on this side. You know what I mean? I got more to. When he weighs his options, he's like, I think doing it the right way is just a little bit better for me. You know, and that's the brother that you turn out to be. Like, you had a choice to really go all the way in with this street shit, or do what you did and blow up with in life by doing it the right way. And I mean, I'm sure it was harder, but you put a lot of work in, but you got the result of not looking over your shoulder, not being incarcerated, not screwing up your name. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's hard once you start getting into that criminal lifestyle, man. It's hard to get a lot of things, you know what I mean? Shit, it's hard to get a freaking job, apartments, all kind of stuff, and criminal backgrounds, voting, all that. So, you know, if your name is clean, man, let's keep it that way.
Well, and again, for me, I also think about, again, when we talk about choices, I just think about, the sacrifice, which could be in a whole other podcast because of what, my parents sacrificed to give us a better life. I mean, their first house was burnt down in the Detroit riots, and stuff like that. And so, for me, it's one of those things where I'm in a position now where, I work, in medical and clinical research, have traveled the world, raised a family, and for me, my choice is always to not only be, to be a better person, but I'm humbled enough to say, listen, you know what? How can I help you, in what you're trying to accomplish? And know that even though, like I said, I was not street, nothing like that, but like I said, I had enough family members and enough people that I knew that were in that life, and to see and watch, their trajectory, if you will. And so again, I think to just kind of tie this up is, is brother, keep doing what you do, and realize that, the impact is always, it's one of those things where it may not always be seen, but it's definitely heard and felt.
That's good. That's good. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Well, look, man, I want to thank you for taking the time out to being on this platform. I think this was a very good and enlightening topic. Choices, we can go on and on about that. And this may be part 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
I'm
sure that this right here would probably be enough for part 1 and 2, and then you and I probably get back together.
Yeah.
And end up doing another part. Because that's a topic that you can't get enough of. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of choices that we make in life. Life is built on choices. You know what I mean?
It's definitely open-ended, right? Definitely open-ended.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
it was easy talking to you, so I definitely want to do this again.
Yeah.
But in closing, I want to say again, thank you, and I want to leave the young brothers out there with the same thing that I say every time: the streets are fake, and they love no one. On that note, this has been another edition of Real Spit from a Gangsta Gone Legit. Peace.